Welcome back. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, in its original conception, a theoretical model of human psychology that, in brief, states in order to occupy a state of self-actualization and experience such novel emotions such as joy, transcendence, and deep insight, one must first satisfy their basic primal needs. On the face of it, this theory works because, as a general rule, human societies don't tend to develop chess grandmasters and legendary philosophers if they have to worry about getting stepped on by angry water buffalo, but the hierarchy was also based on a paper written in 1943 calling out things like sleep, financial security, romantic relationships, self-respect, confidence, and getting laid as things we all need to survive. And last I checked, modern society is getting on just fine without any of those, so clearly the document has not aged that well. In order to try and right this wrong, I, in turn, created my own neurotic goose hierarchy of needs, based on the original from Maslow and my own insights into a Minecraft mod pack called RLCraft, which models reality so accurately that it might as well be the real world according to that one internet post I found that supports my opinion, citation needed. At its base, we have all the basics: food, hydration, weapons, armor, enchantments, potions, and passive abilities. All the things an aspiring young human being would need to survive in this difficult modern era. At the second level, we have not repeatedly chain dying to the same tier 3 dragon 43 times in a row. Those are the only two levels. It is admittedly less of a pyramid and more of a 2-floor townhouse with a 3-digit footprint, a leaky sink, no locks on the bathroom door, and a frat house next door that won't stop playing emo rock at 3 in the morning. In my erudite opinion, this is not evidence that it is made-up pseudoscience, and I instead choose to believe that the academic institution has been hiding the true nature of knowledge and society from us in order to force us to buy pieces of paper that claim we are educated for six-figure sums of money before we then proceed to be unemployed anyway, because the job market is a myth created by big government designed to encourage self-assemblage of wage slaves. That's great and all, but it also doesn't explain why we're here today. We're here because I have another theory, and that theory is that Maslow was a low-ris beta male, and the only thing you need to achieve self-actualization is a head hard enough to beat down a brick wall and an inexhaustible respawn point. So, welcome to RLCraft. Again, we're playing the original version for reasons that will make sense in a little bit. Today, I'm asking the question, what if you beat RLCraft, but by only playing the worst parts of RLCraft? I have here a box that is in many ways remarkably similar to my recording setup, in so much as it is currently 3,000 degrees inside and situated in the bottommost depths of hell. That is all I have, because the rules for this run are simple. This respawn area, alongside its definitely legitimately created stash of glowstone, is only here for respawning and nothing else. Beat the Amalgalich, do not leave the Nether. No cheating, except for keep inventory because I have a life. Begin. Let's get started. First thing on the docket, let's see what we're working with. The area I spawned in seems to be some kind of nether forest knockoff biome with large blobs of netherwort interspersed with soul sand and patches of vanilla netherwort growing all over the place. We can get XP from harvesting fully grown netherwort crops, so this is actually pretty useful, seeing as I'm unlikely to be doing a whole lot of mob farming in the near future. And it is also somewhat less useful because it also has extremely large amounts of either very hangry or very angry wildlife that make their presence known by removing critical portions of my anatomy every time I step outside. Multiple times. In very quick succession. In fact, quite aggressively. That's fine, those were all just testing deaths. We now know via a process some nerd calls the scientific method that these mobs do not respond to stealth, cannot be outrun, and cannot be punched to death, rendering them rather more dangerous than 90% of scrape and run parasites because those at least have the visual acuity of a barn door recovering from its birthday bender. This leaves us with precisely one option, which is a strategy I will generously refer to as being a tunnel rat, and more realistically describe as trench warfare, with period-accurate mortar bombardment. Much like trench warfare, and incidentally, YouTube ad revenue, the relevant metric used to measure progress here is CPM, though in this case it stands for corpses per meter rather than cost per mil. In addition to the charming local wildlife, the Nether also has a refreshing temperate climate, if you like living on the surface of Venus. For the rest of us, it sits somewhere between the definition of hell itself and an average Floridian summer on the scale of temperatures and climates I would rather not experience while still retaining my corporeal form. As a result of this poignant exemplar as to the dangers of climate change, my maximum effective lifespan is now roughly the same length as the hit single Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, which I find both thematically compelling and somehow deeply ironic. This time span will not be changing for the foreseeable future. After half an hour of cosplaying as a period-accurate World War I French infantryman, I am rewarded for my efforts with precisely 5 pieces of something called a stalagnate. Despite sounding like a somewhat confused attempt at classifying geological phenomena, this is actually a plant that we can get wood from, and I am now the proud owner of a single crafting table as a result, allowing me to craft many wonderful things with all of the nothing currently in my inventory. Excellent. We are now roughly 2% of the way towards doing something productive. Now we just have to do that again, which is going to be easier said than done. The next nearest stand of I can't believe it's not GMO bamboo is located 100 or so blocks in a direction I will refer to as south, because cardinality is a myth and my F3 menu is disabled. It is also located on a large platform of netherrack a good 30 blocks above my current location. Simply getting to the correct X and Z coordinates is already problematic due to the infestation of friendly neighborhood missionaries trying to schedule a one-on-one meeting with Jesus, but that part, surprisingly, is not the issue. No, the issue is orbital bombardment. Recently, diversity initiatives were passed in the Kingdom of Hell, ushering in a culture of inclusive and respectful debauchery. Previously, demons were limited to identifying as a demon of one of the 7 deadly sins, greed, wrath, etc. Now, Hell recognizes over 141 new sinful identities, including the sin of arachnophobia, the sin of bondage, the sin of all-you-can-eat crab buffets, and, most concerningly for me, the sin of the American military-industrial complex. This is a cacodemon. Its single soul and only goal in life is to rain heavy ordnance down on your personal location anytime you have the audacity to move, breathe, or post a wedding. I have had a boss-level version of this cacodemon floating outside my base for the entire recording session, and anytime I am exposed to it for more than 3 seconds, these little poop balls of a mob will start launching high explosives at me and blowing up chunks of my defensive trenches. I have a very limited number of blocks to work with here, so if this happens too much, I'm going to find myself softlocked. Thankfully, these cacodemons are also dumber than bricks and not terribly skilled in the subtle and unique art of object permanence, so it's not too difficult to fist them to death if you can get close enough to them. 1 down, and unlimited number of them to go. 2 hours of grueling slog later, and I have finally reached the stand of stalagnates, and I am, for my efforts, awarded with a relatively safe way to harvest 7 of them, equating to a whole 6 planks of wood. And when I say relatively safe, I mean relative to my normal levels of safe, which is to say, I'm only sometimes getting shot at. And that was the easy part, because the next task is to get sticks, which turns out to be darn near impossible. Most mods generally assume that you have access to an inexhaustible supply of sticks within about 2 seconds of spawning into a new world the first time, and as a consequence, they tend to not focus a whole lot on giving you non-standard ways of obtaining them. Well, guess what? Neurotic Goose here, welcome to yet another non-standard playthrough, so let's talk about all the ways we can get sticks in RLCraft. Number 1, punch trees. This is not going to work, because we don't have anything that the game considers a tree with which to punch, and to make matters worse, trees don't grow in the Nether, we have no tree saplings to plant, even if they did, and we have no dirt to plant the saplings on, even if we had them and they could grow. Number 2, craft sticks. Not gonna work, because we don't have an axe to chop planks with, or planks that are compatible with an axe to chop, and the slagmite planks just straight up don't work. Crafting recipes to turn planks into sticks do work with stalagnates, but they also require a saw, which needs sticks. Likewise, offhand knife crafting recipes require a knife, which needs sticks, and saplings, which, as mentioned, we don't have. Number 3, Mob drops. Lycanite mobs, alongside a few others, have sticks as part of their drop tables. I have individually searched through every spawning condition for every single Lycanite mob in the game, and can confirm that none of the mobs can naturally spawn in the Nether, leaving me at the mercy of an event-based spawn, a world interaction spawn that I engineer, or sheer random luck. Events are so random that I will either get lucky or not, and all the compatible world interactions rely on having dirt, seeds, and hitting a 0.1% roll, so no thanks, next option. Number 4, steal them. Not going to work because there are no compatible chest loot tables that spawn sticks in the Nether. Amazingly, sticks are not classified as valuable treasure by most of the RLCraft community. I'm certain this was just an oversight. Number 5, find them. Breaking dirt with the treasure hunter ability can give sticks. It also requires dirt, has a very low chance of rolling sticks specifically, and destroys the dirt after it gives you anything. We also still don't have dirt because, Nether, but we can make it with coarse dirt plus hose, so if we get dirt, it might be more relevant. This is, I'm sad to say, actually the best idea I have had out of all 5, but it relies on getting 2 either impossible or incredibly rare items from 2 very specific rare locations, so not likely. Number 6, and even more unlikely, albeit possible, is zombie backpack drops, which probably won't hear because zombies are not considered native to the Nether, though we may find an odd spawner for them now and again. Fingers crossed. Most of these sources of sticks, in short, are strictly impossible, and the rest are flopping around somewhere between 1 in a million odds, and you have got to be kidding levels of impractical, so I decide to start with what I think is going to be the easiest step here, getting an axe in the first place. Mind you, just because it's the easiest step doesn't mean that it's easy. There are, barring an incredible amount of luck that I do not possess, precisely 2 ways to get an axe. The first is by looting the Nether City dungeons for a low but not unreasonable chance of either getting a Sinizite or Sinizite diamond axe from their loot tables. Normally, these cities are quite rare, but just by sheer happenstance, I spotted one a couple hundred blocks away, so I made this giant trench that I'm currently walking through to access it. The other way of getting an axe, if you're interested, is playing the Infernal Mob Gacha Drop minigame, which has so many different items in its tables that calling it gacha is frankly an insult to gacha games, since those, at least, sometimes will pay out with the thing you're rolling for. I've seen precisely 0 Infernal Mobs since the start of this playthrough, and don't fancy my chances. So, not likely, but it could happen. This is where the whole climate change issue starts kicking in. Specifically kicking me in right between the eyes. The Nether City might be accessible, sure, insomuch as anything is accessible in this disaster of a dimension, but it's far enough away that by the time I get to it, I'm either dying of hypothermia or about to start dying of hypothermia, which gives me an optimistic 30 seconds of exploration time before I lose critical limb functionality or my head melts off like a grape in a microwave. And that's the best case scenario. Stub your toe in the trenches, you die before you even get there. Have to punch a mob out of the trenches? Nope, you ran out of time. To add to that, there's also spawners in the Nether City itself, so even if I do arrive with spare time, exploration is nearly impossible because I have to work around all the things that want to kill me. Of course, nearly is not entirely, and such technicalities are the material by which my channel rests upon, so eventually I do break into the first building, barricade myself inside, and get a good long look at the contents of its chest. There is, and I wish I was joking here, nothing worth caring about, except for some iron ingots. Lovely. The next bit of town is a kind of enchanting complex thing, which cannot spawn the tools I'm looking for, so for the most part I don't bother looting it. The exception to this is one chest of random junk, which I quite literally was tunneling directly into. I honestly could not care less about the contents of said chest, but the chest itself is going to be handy for storing the shockingly wide collection of random garbage I've been hoarding since the start of the playthrough, and wood's going to be a bit of a premium, so I yoink that and take it back to the safe house. Eventually. The whole melting into a puddle of feathered tar thing tends to throw a spanner in that plan a couple of times, but who's counting? For whatever reasons, the mobs and the Nether in general take a bit of a chill pill after this, allowing me to push into a building directly behind the enchanting sector. This is one of the few structures that spawns without any mob spawners inside, and as such, looting it is both easy and productive, by a certain definition. not only do I get an axe from one of the bedrooms, I can also do the wonderful productive things like steal the flooring for extra wood-ish planks in the unlikely event that I get to do something within this side of the century. It doesn't last, of course, and in my haste to collect such valuable resources as the potted plants, I am spotted by the friendly neighborhood Sawhead 136 and promptly blown through the floor, resulting in an ignoble death due to a sprained ankle. Doesn't matter though, we got what we came here for. And ironically, what we came here for does end up being the potted plants, and also the floorboards. With access to a somewhat more generous supply of wood-ish planks, iron, and the single piece of something called nether reed I stole out of their planter boxes, I am now able to progress to the next stage of my master plan that I totally did not figure out on the fly while I was writing this script. For you see, sticks might be incredibly important to us, but they aren't a hard requirement for making tools. Step 1, get some lava. Easy enough, we have a bucket and are quite literally stuck in the nether, except for when I forget to reset my nether spawn and respawn back in the overworld. This lava, when combined with my nether reed and a bit of soul sand, creates a nether reed farm. Much like a regular sugarcane farm, this lets me get sugar and paper, but the reeds also have a recipe to craft a plank-like block that might be useful in the future, and a secret fourth use. Step 2, blow up the city with questionably placed furniture. I stole this bed from this building, by the way. It's not my fault that these people were keeping a live hand grenade in their living room. This explosion does a couple of things. For one, it gets me an item called a respawner statue. I have been using one in my safe house with an ender chest of cheated-in glowstone dust to use as a proxy for respawning in the nether since I'm too lazy to find a mod that lets me do it properly. But now that I have legitimately obtained one, I can now grab some legitimate glowstone and plonk this down wherever and use it as a kind of relay point to extend my effective operating time from one playthrough of the hit single Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees to 2 playthroughs, predicated on me being able to make a safe room to put it in, which is something of an open question. The second thing it does is allow me to collect several blocks of forged sinizite from the foundations of the structure, give or take a tiny little bit of trice-assisted self-immolation. These two materials combined allow me to craft a sinizite pickaxe, which is an entirely unremarkable bit of equipment that in a normal run I would never bother even touching, given the incredible amount of nonsense it takes to procure. But this isn't a normal run, and I'm pretty certain it's also the only pickaxe I can make without sticks, so it might as well be the second coming of Notch himself. Now, the caveat to sinizite tools is they take 12 levels of either mining or gathering to use. Okay, it's the nether. Getting XP is easy. The hard part is keeping it. To date, I have not once ever been able to amass more than 4 levels of XP before I either melt into a pile of tar and feathers or am summarily obliterated by the flavor of the week mob that spawned in, took one look at my bowl of Wheaties, and immediately decided to take a massive steaming pee in them. Mob farming, then, is probably not going to be a good answer here. Thankfully, we have a whole host of really, really terrible answers that we can use instead. We could spam craft items, which takes a skill that costs 5 levels of XP and stuff to craft items with. Or we could grow netherwort very slowly on all the soul sand that we don't have, with all of the convenient space that I have definitely made available in my panic box. Or we could smelt things. You know, all of the things that I have. We do have lava, I guess, and we can make netherrack furnaces, but finding the things to smelt is going to be a bit of an issue. I chose all of the above. Any single one of these options is not anywhere close to sufficient unless I take it to impractical extremes, but a couple well-placed bed explosions under the pain box gets me a couple stacks of netherrack, and also exposes a cave of fully grown netherwort crops that I definitely 100% knew was there, and harvesting all that gets me to the point that I can unlock XP crafting. And so begins the age of agriculture, the font of farming. The, really boring bit where I hide in a corner and continuously edge death by heat stroke while waiting for netherwort to grow. I really hope I don't have to explain how farming works at this point, but even without having to work around Demeter's yearly temper tantrum, suffice to say that this takes a while. A while, however, is not forever, and I am nothing if not too patient for my own good, so between a lucky discovery that I can survive slightly longer if I stay away from fire and lava and don't move, the random mobs giving me free XP bonuses every time they get stuck in the by now exceptionally confusing and blasted terrain, and the sheer volume of nether wart I can grow, 12 levels of mining isn't all that difficult to grab. And it only costs me 23 lives. Having a pickaxe, and a relatively decent one at that, is a game changer for a whole host of reasons. Until now, my ability to tunnel has been strictly limited to areas with lots of gravel, soul sand, or nether wart because those were the only things I could break and build with. This resulted in a bunch of stupidly inefficient little wormholes going everywhere with no real semblance of order. With a pickaxe, though, the whole world is now my extremely spicy oyster, and I can dig and build in a straight line all I want. More relevant to me, however, is that I can now excavate the nether ores dotting the landscape. Sinazite, obviously, lets me make more tools. Nether quartz and gold are useless for their material outputs, but the XP, and in the case of quartz, angry butch crystal lizards that it spawns when I break it, do have obvious practical applications as well. Thus begins the second stage of trench warfare: subterranean espionage with a jackhammer. Sinazite tools only have iron levels of durability, but their mining speed matches that of gold, making them phenomenal for, say, high-efficiency underground highway construction in the Nether. My first priority is getting more Sinazite, obviously, because more picks more better, but the stuff is quite common, and shooting a straight line towards a destination will net me plenty to pay off the pickaxe cost. My second priority is picking up anything and everything that can be used to make more XP. Quartz ore, netherrack for smelting, gold nuggets for, not much, honestly, but all of it gets dumped directly into the most important skill tree of the run: magic. Subterranean skullduggery is fine and dandy, and is right up there with fire, hand-washing, and universal healthcare on the list of things that has resulted in historically massive increases in the quality of life and life expectancy of the human race, but it does precisely zip-diddly-doodah to solve the second major justification for my 34-digit life insurance premiums, which is the fact that hell has not, in fact, frozen over. The usual solution to overheating in RLCraft is to soak your head, but water, like Styx, is something of a premium purchase, and I count myself lucky if I can even afford store brand. Pay no attention to the fact that it has been regularly raining in the Nether for no particular reason throughout the entire run. I think this is something to do with my shaders. Once I have those levels, getting an enchantment table is easy. Go-Go Gadget, Grand Theft Furniture, and while you're at it, Grand Theft Wooden Flooring, because I need more chests, and also because it was there, and I wanted it. Forget scraping the bottom of the barrel here, folks. We are straight up licking the spiders off the basement in this run. Flooring is a valuable resource. Alright, we have furniture, and the floor to put it on. Now we just need the lapis to use it. I can't actually recall seeing lapis spawning in any of the chests that I might reasonably have access to in the city when I routed this, and we are largely pushing the limits of my melting point by getting there. So dungeon crawling is out, leaving me no choice but to embark on a grand nether quartz strip mining adventure in the hopes that I can get a Vapula, read Butch Crystal Lizard, to drop it for me. It's a 25% chance, and they have a very low chance of spawning per block of quartz or sinazite mined, so, we'll be a bit. Alternatively, I could just get incredibly lucky and get it within, 5 minutes. Some days you live right, I guess. This lapis then gets immediately reinvested into making what has to be quite possibly the singularly worst pieces of gold armor I have ever had the misfortune to own in my life. The rolls on this armor are so bad that I would straight up be better off going into battle wearing a choker chain and string bikini top, but it doesn't matter because all they have to do is hold the chilling enchantment. This is, to date, the first time I have ever bothered using this piece of garbage enchantment, but in this one special, unique situation, it is quite literally a lifesaver. In short, chilling makes your armor cold. Normally, this would kill you because you already are cold all of the time anyway, but in the Nether, 2 pieces of it are just barely enough to keep you from boiling in your expensive gold soup can as long as you aren't sprinting or standing near fire, lava, campfires, lit furnaces, or anything hot at all, really. Congratulations, Goose. You have now spent a hair over 8 hours of your life in hell, and have finally figured out how to not die every, 2.6 minutes. Way to go, champ. Next obvious step, get more chilly armor, and keep the stuff I already have from rotting off my body the instant a single mob decides it takes a liking to my keister. The former is pure RNG for mining, and there's nothing to do but grind in the mines. The latter is why I went with gold armor instead of something, good. Golden Osmosis is a reskillable passive that's basically like lousy mending, except it pulls from your XP bar directly. Had you asked me before my Skyblock run, I would have said that this ability is 2 steps below utterly useless, but after seeing how it performed in that run, I have completely turned around on it, and think it's honestly a bit overpowered. Of course, as a side effect, it also chugs XP harder than a freshman frat boy, but if the alternative is dying, I think I can live with my armor trying to guzzle my brain juice every time it gets bent out of shape. Next obvious step, now that I have the ability to not sublimate my chicken nuggets uncontrollably all over the length and breadth of the perfectly average Walmart I find myself stuck in, and also have the ability to break things, is that it's time to start shoplifting everything that's not physically welded to the floor, the welding that was used to attach it to the floor, and the shop floor itself, in that order. Mobs, you see, tend to need to hit you in order to kill you, and they can't do that if I'm in the walls.
He's in the walls. He's in the goddamn walls!
And oh, what valuable things those walls contain. Turns out, when you're playing like a dirty little rat and tunneling through the foundations of the dungeon, you can skip a whole lot of hazards pretty easily, and I am rewarded for my filthy, filthy cheese with more loot than I can possibly use. Seriously, inventory full, no useful items. It's a problem. My highest priority items here are iron, because that's something I don't really have another way of getting yet, and it gets used for a lot of progression stuff. Stone from Volcanus's and Vapula kills, and obsidian and iron from city loot and wood. These materials combined let me make a reforging station, for example, allowing me to reroll my armor and very, very stolen gold sword into something that stands a chance at actually doing something. Probably not a lot of something, mind you, since it's currently rocking 0 enchantments other than the one keeping my feathers attached to my skin, but gold foil underwear and a golden toothpick is still better than prancing around in my birthday suit trying to fist the wildlife. The real fun begins when I finally isolate a library from the rest of the city and have a chance to peruse its collection of, exotic literature at my leisure. Much to my shock, it turns out that the minions of Lucifer Incarnate are surprisingly well-read and have an excellent taste in both sci-fi fantasy and enchantments with which to smite their enemies. While nothing truly fantastic leapt out at me, such as mending, I did locate books with some basic sharpness, unbreaking lifesteal, and education on them, and that right there is a pretty decent general use enchantment payload once I can afford an anvil. The sacking of extra spicy Constantinople ends up going so well that I run headlong into another one of those little minor critical life necessities that hasn't been an issue up until this point, which is food and water. When your life expectancy is measured in seconds, they are about as relevant as a cheese-stuffed breadstick is to the current geopolitical climate, and I honestly can't think of a time that either of them dropped below their maximum level during the first 180-odd deaths of the run. Unfortunately for my currently extantly challenged larder, however, I have a life now, and need to figure out how to stuff my face. Food is trivially easy, because you can just eat netherwort for some reason, but hydration is a bit of a different issue. I have a couple theories on how I'm going to deal with it, but none of them are things that I am going to be able to implement for a bit, and it's also not a problem I need to worry about solving until I have to actually survive exploring further afield, so we'll put a pin in that one for now. Still, with the basics of life in the realm of Hades under my control, it's time to start setting up a somewhat more permanent base of operations that is not bang splat in the middle of a blasted wasteland. This necessitates something that I'm sure will be of exactly zero surprise to anyone who's watched any of my videos thus far, which is digging a ginormous hole and hiding in it. Eventually, when I can stop getting distracted by all of the adoring little slime balls that want a piece of me and have precisely zero respect for private property. That said, Such slime balls also make for hilariously pathetic boss mobs because of their non-standard movement pattern and low HP, and are therefore just basically free squishy loot boxes, so they aren't all that bad to deal with. Curiously, building a secure-ish point of operations in the Nether has quite a bit of design overlap with building a parasite-resistant base of operations underneath an ocean. Like parasites, quite a few of the lycanitic Nether mobs have deeply questionable interactions with the terrain, and between the mobs that melt blocks, the mobs that blow blocks up, the mobs that just clip through blocks whenever they feel like it, the mobs that delete blocks by existing, and the mobs that piddle lava, fire, and mysterious fluids everywhere like an incontinent volcano, there is a broad assortment of mob cheese to counter. This results in a base that is as low to the ground as possible to prevent vertical clipping, absurdly thick walls on the base to prevent lateral clipping and also help prevent the mobs from spotting me in the first place, a fully lit, slabbed up, and enclosed interior to sort of help double counter different classes of mob spawning mechanics, and despite this, we still have mobs that can spawn in spawn-proof lit areas. And also those mobs explode, so all of my storage areas and delicate bits get to be spaced out and have ablative armor padding on all sides. Even with all of this work, there is still going to be mobs that can spawn down here, case in point, but there's really not much I can do about that short of filling the entire place with open fence gates or something, and I'm really hoping it doesn't come to that. Eventually, through happenstance, chance, or my personal favorite, direct divine intervention from Notch himself, I am able to carve out a little hole to call my own, stuffed full of only the finest, definitely not stolen dumpster detritus, and questionable funny forest fungus. By this point, I have had no less than 5 different kinds of lycanite mobs spawn in my completely spawn-proof and contained area while completely ignoring any and all of the attempts to secure it, so additional work is absolutely going to be required before I can actually live here. But compared to where I started off, the place is not half bad. And that, I think, will do it for today, though. So I will leave you all simply by saying thank you for your time, and as always, I hope you enjoyed.